But good morning, guys. Happy Mother's Day, first of all. I'm so excited to be here this morning, bringing the word to you guys. I'm looking out here, and I see that we're missing some faces, but it is crazy to see how much we've grown since we've moved from the Onion Creek Senior Center. So that is just a blessing in itself to see. I'm so happy to see that. But let's get started. Have you ever been in a situation where you quickly realize... Oh, thank you, honey. I appreciate that. See, she's awesome. Have you ever been in a situation where you quickly realized your role in the situation was to just listen? And if you're anything like me, you're probably fighting the urge to jump in and fix the situation. You'd be like, if that was me, I would do this, or I would do that. But if something's telling you to just listen, I want you to dig into that. So husbands, I need y'all to pay really close attention today, okay? So it's going to help you for lunch. So for me, about 1.5 years ago, I responded to a call in Austin. I'm a police officer, by the way, so if you didn't know that, this is where this is going. I responded to a call in Austin for a 13 or 14-year-old, and when I get there, this kid comes out of his apartment, and he's got these big old tears welling up in his eyes. And during that time, I remember him telling me about his depression. He was telling me about how his mother wasn't paying attention to him, giving more attention to his other siblings. And I remember how hard school was for him and how hard and difficult life had been for him up to that moment. And as an adult in this situation, I remember telling myself constantly, for me, this is only a short time for him. But for him, this is all he's known. And I remember as we talked, it was a majority of him talking and just me listening carefully. I was listening to his words. I was listening to his pain that he felt. And so this was so I could accurately see if I had a solution for him in that moment. And of course, in a life of pain and suffering, emotionally and mentally, there's only so much I could do temporarily. And this was one of those moments where I knew listening would help because God had laid that on my heart. So at the end of our conversation, I understood much of what was going on in his life and what he was experiencing because I listened carefully. And I saw him beneath the surface. I saw that these weren't tears that were temporary, but these were tears of years of pain and suffering. And I couldn't offer him a solution that was permanent. But I looked at him and I knew there was something I could offer him that would help because I was listening and I heard more than just words. I heard his heart. I asked him if he wanted a hug. He looked at me and he nodded yes. And I embraced this kid what felt for like minutes. And when he let go, he looked at me and he said he felt a little bit better, which made me feel a little bit better too. And then he went back inside. And I remember my partner on the call, as we're walking back to our patrol cars, he looks at me and he asks, like, why'd you hug that kid? And I looked at him and I just told him, I was like, it's because he needed it more than I did. And we go through life so often thinking about ourselves, like, what's best for me? And this could have been a normal call where we get the alert, we respond, and we're efficient, we get out of there nice and fast. But the Spirit, I felt it prompt me to just slow down and listen. And I did. And I learned that when we listen with care to our family, our friends, and yes, even strangers, people feel loved when they feel heard. And that's where lives are changed. Our main idea today is people feel loved when they feel heard. Today we're going to be continuing our Blessed Sermon series. We're going to be in the letter L, listening with care. And as we go through the word today, we're going to be pulling 3 truths through the word about listening with care. So first we're going to be turning to James chapter 1, verses 19. If you've got your Bibles or your iPhones and the Bible app, you can pull it up. It says this, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger." Now, this is just straight up wisdom. So if you were to get up and walk out right now, this is what I really want you to take with you. But we're here for 30 more minutes, so we're going to keep going. So I'll tell you, I struggle with this in my marriage all the time. My lovely wife, Autumn, she'll be talking about something going on in the neighborhood, and I'll just blurt something out. It'll be an answer, a solution, and she just looks at me. She's like, "Are you going to let me finish?" And usually I let her finish, and she keeps going, and then we'll talk. But why would James tell us to listen to others and be quick to hear? Because some of us, me included, are programmed to selectively listen or not listen at all. And we need all the information in order to respond. And being quick to hear means going against our instinct of speaking. And that's tough. I find it so funny that I'm preaching on it this week, because if you ask Autumn, "Hey, who has the toughest time listening?" she's going to point right at this guy. She's like, "This guy right here." And so I've learned a lot in preparation for the word today. And I've thought about it. And as a community here at the Vine, we do a pretty good job of listening to each other. And I say that with pride, because when we're in life group, like, I want to hear you talk. I want to hear your story. I want to get to know you better than I already do. But my question for you today is, are you doing that outside the walls of your church? Are you doing that outside the walls of your life group? Are you doing that outside the walls of your house? Well, why would I need to do that outside my personal life? Because loving others doesn't stop at your front door. Jesus gave us the great commission of going out and making disciples. And so when we enter the world, sometimes we're going to have to be quick to listen. We're going to have to be listening to the stories that we talk to, of the people that we talk to. And before we can plant those seeds of the gospel, we're going to have to be quick to listen. And it's especially hard to listen when people are expressing hurt that they've had and they blame it on the church. I want to take a moment to pause here and just address this for a moment. I want to acknowledge that there's people in the room today that have experienced church hurt. And I don't want to say that lightly. I've gone through it too. And if that's you, I want you to know that you are fully seen and you are fully heard. But if I can encourage you in moments like this, God is shaping and refining you. You were never meant to be stuck in those spaces. God even wants to redeem those spaces in your life. Let's keep going. If you are quick to listen, you'll be slow to speak. Because through listening, you are thinking through their words. You're searching for their feelings in that moment through the conversation you're having. And speaking slowly doesn't always mean giving an immediate answer, because if there is a problem, the best chance for a solution is by knowing the entire problem. So you're going to have to hear the entire story of what's going on. And that takes time. And especially if you're looking to give an answer that's biblically rooted, and we never want to give an answer that contradicts the Bible. Proverbs 18:13 says, "If one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame." Trust me, you can come talk to me about anything, and the cop in me will give you my 2 cents right off the bat. But it's not going to be right. It doesn't mean it'll be wise, and it would be my folly and my shame if I were to answer before I heard the whole thing. But if you take a moment right before you respond, you can respond with wisdom and sound advice. So when we hear others speak to us, be quick to hear and be slow to speak. What would that look like for you and I to adopt this in our everyday lives? Where everybody we come into contact with feels fully seen and fully heard, and you and I quickly build trust with them. And it's in moments like this when you and I build trust and they become eager to receive the truth of the gospel. Let's talk about the other tough one. Slow to anger. That's tough. It's tough with family. It's tough with friends, and yes, even strangers. But I'm going to focus on family and friends. Who here has a family member or a friend that doesn't know Christ? Me too. That might have been some of the people that you wrote down last week. I pray for them daily. But in our conversations, I can find myself getting upset or even frustrated. Usually it's because I've felt what God does in a relationship with, when I'm in a relationship with him, and I'm not just taking somebody else's word for it. And these knives from our families, they cut a little bit deeper than it does with strangers. And so when family expresses skepticism or hurt, and they blame it on church or they blame it on God, As hard as it is, we have to be slow in our emotions in order to listen to them. When we are slow to anger, we are setting examples for others. First off, we're setting examples for our children. If we can't show our children how to slow down in a tense situation, how can we expect them to do the same thing? Secondly, when you speak with your family and your friends and you find yourself in a biblical conversation and they're blaming all their hurt, everything, all their misfortune on God, that's a tough spot to find yourself and not get frustrated. It's tough to not just blurt something out. But in those moments, you have to be quick to hear. You have to listen with care. And you have to hear so much more than just words. You have to be slow to speak because you're processing what you've heard, including emotions and feelings. And when you're quick to hear and you're slow to speak, you tend to be slow to anger. That's because you're trying to find yourself to help. You're trying to understand more. And because you have better understanding, you will be able to respond better. And all of this takes time when you're listening with care, which leads us into our first truth. Listening takes time. Just like when I was with this kid that I didn't know talk about his life for a really long time, and it felt like forever. I just got a glimpse. But I was able to process his words slowly so I could understand his experience and respond appropriately. And if we want to bless people by planting seeds of the gospel in their lives, you have to be ready to listen to their story, their entire life story, because the way you respond tells them if you heard them or not. And people feel loved when they feel heard. We're going to continue by jumping into John chapter 4. This is where Jesus had left Judea and he's on his way to Galilee. And on the way, he had to pass through Samaria. And we're going to start in verse 4, where it starts. It's on the screen now. And he had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son. Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour. A woman from Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria?" For Jews had no dealings with Samaritans. And so I was like, how long was this trip? And I looked it up. The trip from Judea to Jacob's well, where he met the Samaritan woman, was roughly 30 to 40 miles. They didn't have cars back then, so it probably took 2 to 3 days of walking. And so when he stops here, I imagine that Jesus is thirsty. I imagine that his legs are tired and he needs rest. However, he's sitting beside this well and he asks this Samaritan woman for a drink, and she just responds. "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria?" For Jews had no dealings with Samaritans. Which is important to note. Jesus is about to break boundaries here. And Jesus knows what he's doing. In this moment, he's intentional when he begins the conversation, but he listens to her, and I bet he hears more than just words. Maybe he's hearing the inflection of her tone. Maybe he's hearing shame. Maybe he's hearing hopelessness. But nonetheless, Jesus is hearing something that we can't read. And during all of this, he's breaking social boundaries. He's breaking social norms. What do social norms of today tell us? They say, hey, don't talk to your political opposition. They say, hey, don't talk to people from other religions. They say, hey, if they're not in your circle, don't talk to them. And like I've said before, loving others doesn't stop at your front door, and it doesn't stop with social boundaries. And so Jesus hears this woman, despite his thirst, despite his weariness, and he hears something so much deeper. He's putting aside his own needs, his own wants. And through this conversation with the Samaritan woman, he gives her an answer to a problem she didn't even realize she had. He gives her hope. He reveals to her that salvation is for everyone and that the living water which satisfies all thirst isn't limited to just the Jews. We see this in verses 19 through 24, where the Samaritan woman is responding to Jesus after he reveals he knows about her multiple husbands. It says in verse 19, "Sir, I perceive you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know. For salvation is from the Jews, but the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." Excuse me. Jesus took a moment that could have been short. It could have been easy. He could have got some water, got back on the road. But he didn't do that. He chose to remain in his weary state. He chose to continue being tired. He chose to sacrifice his comfort for someone else's needs. And we see this, the ultimate sacrifice that he made for us. He sacrificed his comfort. He sacrificed his needs for our needs. He sacrificed himself for us, knowing that we deserved death but needed salvation. Jesus had these side conversations all throughout the Gospels, where he stops, he has intentional and deep conversations where he heals people, but this one was different. Jesus listened when it was easy not to. Jesus listened when he could have served himself and left, but Jesus was always selfless and sacrificed. But he allowed a conversation to unfold at its own painful pace because that's who Jesus was. Jesus sacrificed for others all the time. He gave us an example of talking to someone through their skepticism, and it led to a bigger conversation where the truth was revealed. In verse 25, Jesus sacrificed his time, he sacrificed his comfort, he sacrificed boundaries, and he was able to reveal the gospel to someone, and it changed their life forever. Verse 25, it says, "The woman said to him, I know that Messiah is coming, he who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things." And Jesus said to her, "I who speak to you am he." Now I'm going to ask, are we not listening because it requires too much sacrifice? Are we not listening because, hey, I can't be seen with that person. They make me uncomfortable. Their views are different. Who cares? Because if you don't, there's a real possibility that the world and culture will. Which takes us to our second truth today. Listening takes sacrifice. From my illustration earlier today, when I was talking to that kid, I could have told him what my instincts, what my carnal self wanted to. I could have been like, hey, you've got 3 to 4 years. Just wait. You're going to get out of here. Just deal with it. And that conversation would have been done quick. The Lord, in that moment, led me to sacrifice, just like Jesus did with the woman at the well. Getting past inconvenience, getting past a social boundary, getting past every excuse to walk away instead of listening to a stranger with care can be a sacrifice in itself. When I found myself in this conversation, the Lord was sweet enough to remind me to listen quickly and intently. And I took time to respond so I could find an answer for this young kid. And sometimes it happens. I didn't have an answer for this kid. But it's not the answer that shows someone they're heard. It's the response. People feel loved when they feel heard. Jesus, he listened to everyone he talked to. So if Jesus was out on the street listening to everyone, and I think that's a pretty good clue of how we can reach people too. Jesus listened to people even when he was traveling, and these weren't short conversations. They would delay his schedule. Well, probably not. Let's be honest. Jesus had a divine schedule, and he had divine timing with every encounter probably written into it. But this leads us into our next scripture where Jesus had an encounter. He ignored the crowd, and he listened with care. If you have your Bible, let's flip back to Mark chapter 10, verses 46 through 52. If you got it, say got it. Okay, one person got it. But we got it on the screen, so we'll go with that. And they came into Jericho, and as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a great crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out, saying, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." And Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." And they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up, he is calling you." And throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. And Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" And the blind man said to him, "Rabbi, let me recover my sight." And Jesus said to him, "Go your way, your faith has made you well." And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him on the way. So here we see Jesus leaving Jericho with his disciples and a great crowd. Crowds are loud. So I imagine that people are really excited. You have Jesus here, and I can imagine Jesus can barely see past the front row. But this man, Bartimaeus, who's blind, yells out to him, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." I mean, that in and of itself is brave, but to some that could look desperate. But when somebody's at rock bottom, embarrassment is the last thing you're going to think of. In this crowd surrounding Jesus, many rebuked Bartimaeus. They told him to be silent. When you find yourself in that crowd, what are you going to do? Are you going to be quick to listen, or are you going to be quick to tell them to silence? And Jesus shows us what we should do in a crowd that does just that. Bartimaeus, at his rock bottom, ignores the crowd to call for the one who would listen. And Jesus hears that, and he calls him over. And we find ourselves in that space where everything is telling you no. Everything is pointing you in the opposite direction, but God is leading you against that flow. Lean into that, because you never know what's on the receiving end. You could change a life through Christ. Nonetheless, we see Bartimaeus eager to get to Jesus. He sprang up. No, he probably didn't just go, "Jesus, okay, thank you." No, he sprang up. I imagine somebody is excited. He is jumping up, and he goes to Jesus. And Jesus, always serving others, he asks Bartimaeus, "What do you want me to do for you?" Bartimaeus replies, he says, "Rabbi, let me recover my sight." And Jesus healed him. What a moment where Jesus once again changes someone's life forever. Jesus takes the path of service to others, and he blessed his life. But it doesn't end there. Jesus tells him, "Go your way, your faith has made you well." And Jesus constantly points us to service to others by example, and by listening to Bartimaeus instead of Bartimaeus going on his own way, immediately he recovers his sight and he follows him on the way. Like, what better way to show us what happens when people are blessed by Jesus? They're so hooked into him that they follow him. And so when we stop and we listen over the noise, over every excuse telling us to walk away, we too can bless people's lives with the gospel. There's been times where I've ignored Jesus trying to lead me in those moments to go against my excuses, and it lives with you for days. You constantly question yourself, what if I had just stopped? What if I had just didn't walk away? What if I had just listened? But I don't want that for us. I don't want that for the Vine. I want us to serve our family. I want us to serve our friends and strangers who don't know Jesus like never before. I want us to listen to others with care so we can change lives through the gospel. And that's how we can serve our community beyond our front door. Which leads us to our final truth. Listening changes lives. When you stop and listen, you'll never know what you're stepping into. Maybe you're at a gas station and the conversation with the cashier is a little bit longer. Maybe you're with that family member where conversations are usually short and quick, but this time it's a little bit deeper. You get to find out who the people are that you're listening to with care. There was a man at a gas station. After a long day of work, he's walking in, and a homeless man on the curb, he asked him, "Hey, do you have a moment to speak?" The man, busy and as tired as he was, said no in his head, but he heard something in the homeless man's shaky voice, which led him to sit down and listen. After a moment, the homeless man looks to the guy and he says, "Wow, you're still here. Most people don't even give me the time of day." The homeless man was battling life. He was battling depression. You name it, he was fighting it. And eventually the conversation ended, and the man left a little bit more tired. He left a little bit more hungry, a little bit more inconvenienced. But the homeless man, he left changed. What we do when we listen won't always feel life-changing, because when we walk away, we never know how the results come out. When we interact with strangers on a daily basis, and when you feel God leading you to listen, be quick to listen. Be slow to speak and slow to anger. The way we respond matters even in a short conversation. Even in short conversations, we can still plant seeds of the gospel. We can still make people feel loved in every conversation because they feel heard. So the question today is, when you leave here today, what does it look like for you to listen with care on a daily basis? Does it mean slowing down with that family member who frustrates you? Does it mean diving into deeper conversations with the coworker that has questions? Does it mean giving the stranger your inconvenience? Husbands, does that mean listening at lunch? But seriously, I want to encourage you to slow down your day. Listen to those in your home. Listen to those at work. Shoot, listen to the person on the H-E-B checkout line. Because you never know where that conversation is going to lead unless you listen and respond. Like, I know it's tough. Hey, my busy schedule just doesn't allow me to do it. But that's where this is. Listening is a way to serve others, and serve others, it will take time. It will take sacrifice, and it will change lives through the gospel. And so we're going to transition into a time of response. So if the band wants to come back up. And as we go into a time of response, I just want you to pray about discernment in these moments. I would like for you to ask God to give you patience in those moments, especially with family and friends, because those are some of the toughest conversations that we have. Shoot, me and Autumn, we got family that we struggle to have conversations with, and I love them, but it gets heated sometimes. But pray for wisdom in those moments. And I don't want you to think, hey, this first conversation, we're going to plant the seed. That first conversation might just be, hey, we're going to talk. I'm going to let you know I care. I'm going to let you know that I can listen and that you're heard. Maybe the next conversation is where you can plant the seed. Maybe it's 3 conversations away, but nonetheless, pray for those moments. Jesus sacrificed his comfort. He sacrificed his schedule. He sacrificed boundaries to serve others. And so I think that we should be striving for his example. He did this all the time.